establecer un concepto que lo llamamos panel con lógica contraria, lo llamamos nosotros, por lo siguiente: no solamente los conferencistas son los expertos, ustedes también son los expertos, y también muchos pues tenemos preguntas que hacer, y queremos dar como esa participación del público, de ustedes, de todos, en esto, para que nos sintamos apropiados de este evento. En esos paneles lo que hacíamos era que hacíamos preguntas para que el público, por ejemplo, respondiera. En este caso queremos tener una charla con Martin, y todo obviamente depende de la dinámica, de la participación, donde podemos preguntar cosas de tipo profesional, de Moodle, técnicas educativas, e inclusive, como le decíamos en alguna reunión de hace unos días con los decanos de sistemas, hay también interés en sus aspectos personales de su vida, y cómo vive una persona como Martin, haciendo una cosa tan importante, pero que también tiene una vida propia y familiar. Entonces, esperamos participación, ¿no? Y nosotros simplemente vamos a moderar, nosotros también tenemos algunas preguntas, pero no nos queremos apoderar de las preguntas. Queremos que sean ustedes los que pase el evento. Vamos a dar una explicación sobre Twitter, y con eso comenzamos.
Bueno, ya habíamos comentado el tema, esencialmente en el hashtag Moodle14. Estamos haciéndole gestión a las preguntas, porque pues igual consideramos que pueden haber muchísimas inquietudes de parte de ustedes, que queremos conocer a Martin un poco más como ser humano, como la persona que está detrás de toda esta gran cantidad de innovaciones que nos ha traído. Entonces, queremos procesarlas de una manera un poco más formal, y también pues obviamente hacerlo de manera directa con ustedes. Entonces, les recuerdo nuevamente el hashtag Moodle14, y estamos haciendo el seguimiento.
Adelante.
I also have some questions for you.
Okay. También va a ser preguntas para ustedes. Este es un conversatorio. Entonces, los micrófonos están listos para que puede ser por Twitter o puede ser también personal acá directamente.
So the question was, has Moodle thought of building graphical tools for making content in Moodle? So we have, it's really hard to listen to translation on myself at the same time. So when you say Moodle, in this case, that's the community. So we have obviously the editor, and in 2.7 we just made a new editor, and this new editor is more functional than ever before in that it's a Moodle native piece of software, and it's easy for developers now to make plugins to extend the editor and give it a new functionality. So already I've seen some very interesting plugins. For example, some people have been talking about, for some time, the idea of small blocks of content that you would, like little templates, that you would have maybe on a menu, and you can insert them into the content very easily. So maybe, for example, you might have a small block of content that says, maybe it has a small picture of a person, and it says tip. And has a small comment, it's an extra tip, right? Maybe it's a nice little graphical thing. So you could reuse that, and throughout the content that you're adding in your course, you could add these little tips on the side as a little graphic design device, but also to break up the content. So someone already made a plugin for the editor, the new editor, that lets you define these little pieces of content, and you can insert them into your text just from a menu. And you can define those little blocks at the site level. So the administrator could define lots of these little pieces of content. And so that's a tool that helps you build content quickly. But I imagine the community will come up with more and more interesting plugins for the editor, and that's the place to do it, probably, to create content, because if you do it in that editor, you can do it everywhere in Moodle. So if you want to make a forum post with fancy stuff, you can do it. Make a glossary entry anywhere. So, yeah. So I guess it's been in the conversation a lot, but we're not specifically making a new particular tool. We're just trying to make the platform support these tools with developers.
Gracias a Roger Escobar por esa pregunta. Hay una pregunta relacionada y es si todos los desarrollos de Moodle deben ser open source. Incluso si no se publican a la comunidad. Todos los plugins de Moodle deben ser liberados como open source también.
Well, not, yes, mostly, because the way the GPL license works, if you take any code that is GPL licensed and you change it or put it into something else, then the new code is also GPL. But you are not required to release your code. So you can make your own module and keep it on your own site, and you don't have to share it with anybody. But it will be GPL still. It's almost impossible, I think, to write Moodle code without looking at Moodle itself or taking at least 1 or 2 lines from it. So yes, it's sort of forced to be GPL. Which is one thing, that's why I picked the GPL. It has this viral nature, and it kind of enforces freedom, a bit like the police in the streets. So it's a good thing for the community that it is like that.
Yo lo he leído en su página, ¿cierto? Yo quisiera de primera voz que usted me dijera por qué Moodle fue construido sobre el enfoque del constructivismo social.
Well, so I'll tell you a bit more of the backstory. So I was working at my university, Curtin University in Perth, and I was helping the teachers there using the new technologies of the internet. And because I had a lot of experiences with my own schooling as a child, I was learning on shortwave radio. And then later, I was in the internet very early, at a young age, before the web. So I was doing a lot of interactions with people on the internet. And I had this very strong sense that the internet was being built by its users, and that there was a lot of collaboration, and there was a lot of two-way conversations going on. But when the web came in, it became a very one-way medium. The web was much more about publishing and static pages. And I was helping the teachers trying to move their courses that were in real-life environments to take advantage of the internet. But the tools that were there were very much about just transmitting information. And I could see that there was a problem. I was looking for different tools and trying them, and I couldn't find anything that was good. And I thought, I have to build something here, because there's all this potential, and yet there's nothing that does what I want. And there's a lot of story in there, and I'll skip quickly. But so when I started building it, I realized that I needed to know more about the theories behind communication and about education. And I met one of the teachers that I was helping. I met him in a department in my university. He had a very strong sense of this. He was an education researcher, and I had really good conversations with him, and I said, will you be my supervisor for a master's degree so I can learn more? And yes, so I did a master's with him, and he became my mentor, and his name's Peter Taylor. And I still see him now and then. Then I did a PhD following that as well. And in the course of that, I could really see that there was this theory of social constructionism, as I call it, sort of a number of very obvious things to teachers, that have come out over the last couple of thousand years. So the first part is that you can't put information into someone's brain. You can give them experiences so that their brain constructs the knowledge. And they're only constructing on top of the knowledge they have. So like Vygotsky, the things we were talking about yesterday, they're talking about this notion of giving an optimal environment for the person to build their own knowledge. The constructionism is more about the fact that this process in your mind occurs better when you are doing something, when you are physically doing something. It can still just be speaking. So by creating sentences and by formulating thoughts, you're also learning, you're teaching yourself. By building objects, by creating new projects, you're teaching yourself, because there's a lot of feedback going on between your hands and your body and the knowledge. And the social constructionism just takes that into a social dimension. So if you have people that are interacting with each other, creating things for each other, that they are learning together. And this is the essence of collaborative learning. We're all sharing things with each other. Now, back in 1999, when I was really getting into this, the web was not like that. The web was still very much transmission. Those of us who've been on the internet in the early 90s, we understood it could be more interactive. But now, of course, the web is very collaborative. Look at Twitter, look at Google, Facebook, blah, blah, blah. We're all sharing and we're all learning from each other continuously. It's just in a very wide, diffused way. So the Moodle I was building was like a mini internet for the students and the teachers to be having that kind of experience, but in a protected environment. And the idea of having all these tools in Moodle was to kind of emulate the things that were coming up on the internet. So we have wikis, we have forums, we have glossaries, we have assignments, we have quizzes, we have all these different ways of interacting with each other and the content. And it's the teacher's job to create the right environment for the students to learn from the content, from the teacher, but especially from each other. And to create groups to make that kind of environment. So that's, I think that is still important today. Yes, you can teach using almost any technology. You know, a good teacher can probably just use Twitter and a student and can probably teach them a lot. But I think the idea of Moodle is that it is optimized for this stuff. It's the affordances, I don't know if you can translate that in Spanish, the affordances of the tools. It's to make it easier. And in fact, my thesis was that if I had a tool like Moodle that was built that way, the teachers would automatically understand it, and this type of teaching and learning would happen. And actually, I think my thesis failed somewhat, because what I now realise is that because of constructivism, the teachers who come from a different background of teaching, maybe more lecture-based, will take that onto the internet. They'll go on the internet and they'll give lectures on the internet as well. And they won't necessarily see the whole collaborative potential. So I think we still have a lot of work ahead of us to help teachers use the internet, and maybe through Moodle, but just use the internet effectively for teaching, and blending it with real-life experiences and all of that. Okay, so you can get started and I can talk for a long time.
Buenos días.
Adelante, adelante. Sí.
Gracias, Jorge. Buenos días, Martín. Tengo una pregunta alrededor de de mundos virtuales. Básicamente muchas empresas en este momento están hablando de mundos virtuales, Second Life, de la integración. ¿Qué opinión tiene alrededor de la integración de Moodle con mundos virtuales como Second Life? Gracias.
Sure, thanks for that. I think we spoke yesterday a bit, but virtual worlds is an interesting thing because in the past, I think a lot of people have said, well, the web is now 2D, obviously the next generation must be 3D. And I don't believe that at all. In fact, I think a lot of the stuff about Second Life is hype. If you think about it, if you look at how people propose to use 3D Second Life environments for education, this is how it works. The students are forced to download a very big piece of software, which only runs on desktop computers. And then they have to make an avatar, and they have to fly through some environment and get lost to eventually find some place. And in that place, they're made to sit in virtual chairs and watch a video, or look at something. When in fact, it's so much easier just to have a link that you click on in a web browser that takes you to a web page that's a video, or you can even. Almost all the things you can do in Second Life are much more effectively done just on the web. If you wanted to have a demonstration or an animation, do that with HTML or Flash, or put a video. There's many ways to show things that don't require a big three-dimensional world. The other problem I have with Second Life particularly is that it is a commercial platform, and it's not open. It doesn't have the advantages of open source. Change it, you can modify it, you can make it exactly what you want. I do think there is a place for simulations. So there are certain things that when you're teaching, they require that you're in the place. So the example I always use is, say you want to teach people how to work in a nuclear power plant. Right, so there's very strict controls, you've got radiation, it's a dangerous environment, and maybe you want to simulate the nuclear core failing, and what would you do, and how would you react? So you need to take people through simulations and training. The virtual world could be useful there. You could create that world, like a game world, where you assume a role, and you play the role in that space, and you get to experience the three-dimensional world around you for that particular simulation. But I wouldn't use Second Life for that, because you can't do that in Second Life very easily. There are some other simulating platforms around. There's one called OpenSim, for example, which is an open source version. It's actually compatible with Second Life, but it's open source. A few people have said they might like to work on an integration with Moodle, and I can see that would be quite handy. Imagine a module in Moodle where the teacher set up the scenario and said, this student is going to play this role, this student play this role, and this information will be pushed into a world created for that class where then people can interact in the simulation. That could be useful, but I haven't seen anybody do that yet. The other thing is the new virtual reality headsets that are coming out will only make this even more powerful, I think. The Oculus Rifts. Actually, I've ordered one for the office, the Moodle office, so we can play with it. But I think there's some potential there for simulation. Still untapped. We've not really looked anywhere into that deep enough.
Quiero comentar algo. Sí, Martin, es que es interesante porque en el Moodle de hace 2 años presentamos una investigación que se está haciendo sobre eso. Y hablábamos de Moodle, ¿recuerdas? Que es Moodle con el Second Life, pero se inició ya una investigación muy fuerte con OpenSim, que probablemente la única diferencia es que puede crear su propio ambiente evitando distracciones, digamos, ¿no? Pero ya acá en la universidad hay algunos variantes de la OpenSim.
Damos paso a una pregunta de Twitter. Pregunta Steven Stifler. En el roadmap del webbook, se ha pensado en la capacidad de crear diferentes esquemas de calificación para un curso.
Just firstly on Manuel's point, there are lots of people doing virtual worlds, but I think we always need to look at what's being learned, what the learning is, because they are fun and they are cool and they are interesting. But what's the learning? We always have to, all of us have to always think, where's the learning going on? With the grade book, so multiple schemes for grading. Well, we already have that. So describe a bit what we have, and maybe you're aware. If I'm not answering the question, please ask again. So you can grade things by simple numbers. You can grade things like assignments using rubrics. The rubrics have criteria that you can define yourself, and some grade things that way. You can also grade with feedback, just textual feedback, you feed your actual comments on things. And you can grade with letters, you know, A, B, C, D, use schemes like that. You can do that now too. As I said in my keynote, the new grade book will let you type in those numbers as well. So you can say, I'll give you a B, and Moodle will convert that to a 74%, or whatever you choose. You can also define those scales. So if you want to type good, very good, and bad, you can also type those things in as well, and they'll be converted to grades. Is there anything else that you wanted that I haven't talked about? Who asked that question? Who asked that question? You at the back, yeah? And the red shirt. Oh, sorry.
Sí, con respecto a la parte de evaluación, se ha pensado, yo celebro que la parte 1, la parte 2, se está trabajando ya la evaluación por competencias. Se tiene pensado diferentes niveles de calificación en la parte de competencias. Me explico, yo genero una rúbrica para trabajar sobre un tema, pero en Moodle no he podido crear que para una competencia evalúe varios ítems de conocimiento. ¿Hay alguna herramienta que permita hacer eso?
Yes, that's the outcomes. We call it the outcomes project. OUTCOMES. There is code already that's come from Moodle Rooms or Moodle partners, and we just have to integrate it into core. The essence of what that does is it lets you, when you're grading small things, say assignments, quiz questions through Moodle, they can be graded on a scale. Maybe the competencies, you know, yes, you have the competency, no, you don't, or it can be more detailed. And then all of these are collected at the course level, and the teacher can say, can look at them and say, yes, this person, based on all these little evidences, does know this thing, and can manually say, yes, they know it, and check. And then this goes against the user, the student. So the student now has a competency, and someone has said they can do it. It hasn't gone into core already because there's some details in there. Should we collect competencies from multiple courses, the same competency, and add them up? Also, what are the algorithms that we can do this automatically? So maybe we say, if they proved 3 times that they know something, we will assume yes, they know it. Or maybe there's more complicated algorithms than that. So maybe we need plugins so people can invent new algorithms to decide if somebody knows something or not. So there's details in there that are still not worked out, and that's what we're working on. So, but if you're interested, search for outcomes, Moodle outcomes, and maybe specification. And on our Moodle docs, we have a very large specification that describes it. It's all in English. But any feedback is good on that.
Una pregunta de una de nuestras conferencistas, Paola Madeo, pregunta ¿cómo ves a Moodle en los próximos 20 años, ¿cómo te parece que será la educación?
20 years. Well, I think as long as we listen to the community and the community leads us where to go, then we will be the tool that the community needs. So that's the easy answer. I mean, personally, I think we are going to get away from screens. We're going to be becoming more voice, and Moodle will sort of become invisible. I mean, there'll be a web interface for management, but I think students and teachers will be doing a lot more voice and other means of interacting with some device. You know, 20 years away, imagine what the internet was 20 years ago compared to now. It can be as different again in 20 years, if not more. I mean, we may all have chips in our heads, owned by the US government, that is somehow we're interacting wirelessly all the time. Who knows? Science fiction shows us a lot of answers, but we don't know the answers. Maybe. But I think the idea of wearable devices, and these things will get smaller and smaller. It's even though we're having fun with our fingers on a piece of glass at the moment, that's going to look very antique in 20 years. I think.
Conociendo todos estos avances tecnológicos en la educación, quisiera que me dijeras cuáles serían los factores claves de éxito para la universidad, la escuela del futuro.
Big questions. That's one of the questions I have for you, actually. When do you see university? Because this is it's a big debate around the world. What is the university good for? Personally, I always look back to that experience I had at university with a mentor that I told you about, that I found someone who spent all their time thinking about a subject and was able to communicate, and I could learn from that person just by having lots of conversations, random conversations with them. And that was the university provides that space, and there's nothing quite like it. What I'm seeing now is a trend, and maybe you're seeing it too, towards universities being more like very much training places, and you pay your money, you go here for a certain time, and you'll come out with a qualification that will get you a job, right, skills based. And while everyone's doing this thing now, but are we only building people to be Lego blocks in society? In this way, maybe we are. I'm just asking the question. Or maybe there's a higher thing, more of a place like a petri dish where citizens grow. Maybe we should be thinking more of the whole person and thinking more of citizens who are capable of learning anything they want, right? And interacting in any part of society that they want. For me, I like that idea. And I think that's where universities came from. I think it's, again, Socrates, sitting around with a bunch of people discussing philosophy in Greece, and that's we don't want to lose that so much. It's difficult to know. We are all individually very small against the wave of technology and innovation that's happening around us. So we all have to work for what we believe in, and hopefully together we come out with the right things.
Okay. Nos pregunta Mónica Durán, ¿cuál cree que es la principal razón para implementar Moodle en una organización y no cualquier otro LMS? Y Juan Camilo Páez quiere saber un poco cuánto tiempo le llevó construir aquella primera versión de Moodle.
Okay, two very different questions. So, the first one, I'll answer the first one earlier in time. I'll answer in time order. So Moodle I sat down, I knew I was going to build something, I had to find a name, because I had to name the first file something. And I spent some time sitting down making the word Moodle. And long story, but it had to be a domain name free, it had to be an acronym, it had to have the right words in it. Anyway, I sat down. From then, it was approximately 3 years working by myself, long hours, every day, doing a lot of thinking. I had a friend, Shane Elliott, who was had spare time and would sometimes sit with me in my office, and we'd work on some things together. So some of the early work was from Shane, my friend. But it was mostly myself directing it, and we had a lot. I just had a lot of that, and my wife at the time was just like, "So you're spending all your days and nights working on this thing that you're going to give away for free?" And I'm like, "Yes." It was hard to explain, but I felt really like once I started it, I couldn't stop because I really wanted to see this going, be something and be out there. And so it took quite a few years. But the very moment I put it on the internet as a beta version in November 2001, and the next day, a guy in British Columbia in Canada downloaded it and was playing with it and was going to install it for his school. And he was 70 years old. And he still is a Moodler now. So he's Moodler number 2, really. And then there was a lot of people using it. And it wasn't until August 2002, on my birthday, I released version 1.0. And that's, at that point, I had already a lot of feedback, and I'd already added language support and some other features. Someone in Saudi Arabia paid me $600 to write a quiz module, which was, at the time, because I was very poor, was quite good money. But I did it in a week, to write the first quiz module. So, yeah, it took a few years. Now, the second question was, why should people choose Moodle for corporate, an organization? It's the same reasons as you'd use it anywhere else. It's open source, it's a growing project, it's a developing, to become part of a community, it's a developing thing. Obviously, if it matters to you, it is free, so you can just get it and try it and use it. Also, I think the collaborative aspects of Moodle give you more than most training solutions do. Most corporate training does tend to be very, very focused on the skills, the competencies, watching videos, answering questions. You can do all that. But we have more. We have a lot more. And we have a lot of people in the Moodle community working on modules specifically for that kind of use in a corporate environment. Plus we have Moodle partners who also provide support for that situation. And so really everything's covered. So I don't tend to sell Moodle. I'm not going to say Moodle's better than this because of this. I'm just working on Moodle because I'm trying to make something worthwhile. And if people use it, then good. If you don't use it, fine, use something else. But yeah. There are a lot of people using Moodle in corporate environments.
Pregunta de Joana Prieto, voy a recomponerla un poquito porque creo que es bien relevante. ¿Cuál es la diferencia entre el contenido pensado para leer y lo que uno puede hacer, digamos, en Moodle, o la diferencia con e-learning?
I don't understand actually. Content's thought to be read.
Yeah, what's the difference between content, just content as you would do for reading sequentially? What's the difference between that and what you can do with...
Okay. It's a very good leading question. So Moodle has these collaborative modules. I know lots of Moodle courses that don't have any content. Right? If you have a good teacher who understands what they're doing, they are getting the students to create the content. start again. You give the teachers, you give the students the ability to create content. Here's an example. We have the database module. You could say it's a high school level course, any level. You could say to your students, here's an empty database. I've created the fields. And perhaps they're studying biology. So you might say to the students, go out with your phones into the world, around Bogota. I want you to look for plants that are native to the area. I want you to take photographs of them. I want you to find them on the internet, research them, discover their Latin names, find the history of this plant, and then come back, and I want you to put this into our database in the course. Fill in the fields, put the photos in, and create a database of plants around Bogota. And then, that is the basis for the next activity. The next activity in Moodle might be, for assignments, I want you to take two entries from the database that were not yours, so from other students, and I want you to compare them or contrast them or something, and that's an assignment. And then maybe you use the workshop module so that the assignment is actually a peer assignment, and you get the students to grade each other according to criteria that you as the teacher give them, right? And so you're building activities after activities. The students are doing all the content, you're just providing the framework. So that's what Moodle is good at, it's these sequencing of activities. And then later on, you're talking about these biology forums. Those database entries, the Latin names, perhaps, are now automatically linked. They're automatic hyperlinks in the forums. And so if you ever forget what a plant was, and it's mentioned in the forum, you click and it comes up as a link to the database. So it's all about this mixing of activities and playing how using it together. So that's the main difference.
Vamos con una pregunta del público.
Algunos proyectos de software libre como Chamilo hacen una diferenciación entre
he can't hear you. Sorry. Is the mic on?
Prende el micrófono.
Mi español es muy malo, yo voy a hacer en inglés. Some projects like Chamilo or Clara Dokios try to separate LMS from LCMS, from the driving for learner or for driving for professor. It's a question about flipped classrooms or, I don't know, individualized learning. What's Moodle is going on? To focus on the learning, focus on the teacher, or you think we can do, I think Moodle is really good to do both. What do you think Moodle is going to choose, or trying to accommodate the both theories?
Sure. That was why, remember on my keynote there was a mission. I put a love mark next to teachers. I'm not ashamed to say we're more focused on helping teachers. I'm about giving teachers the power to create the learning experiences that they think their students need. The internet is the main, talking about personalised learning, that's what the internet is, that's what this is, right? So on this device, I have access to whatever I want around the world, and I can choose to learn this here and learn this here, and I can build my own learning platform, which is this. But if you choose to go to this university or this school or this company, they are providing one learning experience for you. And that's the Moodle, where Moodle is. So for me, I focus on Moodle being a tool for teachers. I never called it a learning management system, it's a course management system. And it really is focused on the course as a unit of learning and giving teachers those tools. So, of course, within a Moodle site, we also think about learners and their experience, of course. But, yeah, teachers are first.
Bien. Luis Pachón pregunta lo siguiente. ¿Cómo podemos usar Moodle para gamificar un curso con las características actuales de la plataforma?
Well, you can make a game out of anything. I assume you have children, a lot of you. I make games all the time. That's how we get through supermarket shopping. You know, I'll just invent a game. Who can find this first, or who can, little things. So, give me my feedback here. Oh, I see why. Maybe it's not me. So, if you're a creative teacher, you can find ways to make games everywhere. There were some good examples yesterday of games that were external pieces of software, Flash or websites, that you can include into Moodle. So if you can find one of those, there's many on the internet, it's very easy to include them in Moodle as a resource. So add the resource, you have the link. Many of these external games will let you send information to them, such as the name of the person who is the player name. And in the Moodle resource, if you look in the advanced settings, you can send that sort of information to the web page. You can send the name of the current person. You can send all sorts of user profile details to that game, and then the game looks personalised for them. So that's one very simple way of adding a game. Another way to make a game is to use something like badges and some of the... let's stick with badges right now. So you can say, to win this badge, you need to get through all the activities. And if you use conditional activities, so you have to do this one before you do that one, it becomes like a game to get through all the activities and win the badge at the end. Another way to make a game, you can make word games. So in a forum, you can set some rules. Depends on the subject. But you set some rules, and you're restricting the behaviour and saying you can only reply in this way to this thing. And so you can have a game in a forum if you're creative enough. There's some other modules that have been written in Moodle. If you look at Moodle plugins, there's something called the game module, and it will take questions from the quiz database and make games out of them. The game module is quite interesting. And actually, one of our developers at work at Moodle, because we have a thing at Moodle every 6 weeks or so, the developers get 1 week to work on whatever they want, their own projects. And one of them, for his project last week, was working on a new game module that also took information out of the Moodle, out of various parts of Moodle, and was making nice games out of them. So, there's lots of ways. I'm sure you can think of more, but I think there was a conversation earlier about it.
We talked enough. ¿Alguna pregunta del público?
Bien, Roger Escobar pregunta lo siguiente, me llamó bastante la atención. ¿En qué se ha pensado para que los profesores que no saben de plugins puedan construir contenidos más dinámicos para sus alumnos? Obviamente dentro de la plataforma Moodle.
Teachers who don't know the phrase. So, I really think a creative teacher can do anything. Some things I was describing are ways to use existing tools to do interesting things. I'm not sure what the question meant actually. The thing about plugins is, yes, you need the administrator to install plugins, and there is a maintenance process. Because if Moodle upgrades, you have to make sure plugins upgrade. And so there is heavy work there, not always heavy, but there's work there that perhaps a teacher who's not technologically inclined can handle themselves. So, you need an administrator or some technical support. But there is a very wide range of plugins out there, and people doing interesting things. I'm not sure what else the question was asking. here's my question. One question. I'm not sure how we're going to answer this, but what is the, this is for people who use Moodle a lot as a teacher, right? What is the worst thing about Moodle? What is the thing that annoys you the most? I have some answers. You've had a turn already, so I'm going to ask someone else. Yeah, guy in the red shirt. Who's that before? I don't know.
Empiezo yo. Bueno, empiezo por lo que más me gusta. Que
Sorry.
Como tal, yo no me desempeño como profesor, sino como administrador de la plataforma en la empresa en la que trabajo. Y el comentario más seguido que recibo sobre la plataforma es que el sistema de calificaciones se vuelve muy tedioso. ¿Ya? Tener que estar, por ejemplo, revisando las notas y estar calificando puntualmente persona a persona. Muchas veces he recibido la sugerencia de por qué no ellos ellos les queda mucho más fácil hacer el control de las calificaciones de las actividades vía Excel y poderlas subir a la plataforma. Es una sugerencia que me han dado. Personalmente ese ha sido como el mayor descontento de las personas que han tenido que interactuar como profesores con respecto a los cursos. Algo que sí también notábamos que mejoró de la versión 1.9 que teníamos hasta el año pasado, hasta los 2.5.3 que tenemos en la actualidad, es la parte de la administración de las actividades. Antes en la 1.9 uno no podía descargarlas de forma masiva, sino que tenía que ir a hacerlo una a una. Y ya ahora en la 2.5.3 te permite bajar todo el paquete de actividades por tu grupo y poder hacer la calificación.
No, I'm happy to hear that one because we're already working on that. As I said, it's been 6 weeks on the gradebook now, which is a very long time for all of us to be working on one thing. So I think the new gradebook will make a lot of people happy. Yeah, that's been waiting for a while.
Bueno, yo antes de decirle lo que menos me gusta de Moodle, digo lo que más me gusta. La doble O de Moodle, que es la programación orientada a objetos, es lo que más me gusta. Lo que menos me gusta de Moodle, que me lo han expresado los docentes, Adriana me conoce, trabajos con médicos, es la curva de aprendizaje en la parte pedagógica a la parte tecnológica. Siempre se quejan de que es complicado aprender la mecánica, para lo cual en un futuro Moodle debería pensar es cómo hacerlo más hacia el usuario final que a la máquina, para que la herramienta se convierta en algo fácil, intuitivo y de fácil comprensión.
Yeah, I agree. This, some of the things, I mean, I'm aware of that one too. There is a need for training still, for teachers to learn. That can be a training course, a face-to-face course, somebody showing Moodle to them. But I think it's essential that teachers experience Moodle first as a student. It's hard to teach with Moodle well unless you've actually been a student. There's no way you can teach someone this by telling them. They need to experience what it's like for a teacher to move activities around. They need to experience what it's like to get mail from forums. They need to experience the whole process, all the activities, every one of them. And only then can you teach, I think, really well, because you're aware of what students are experiencing. But there is one other development that's happening that might be very interesting here, is Michelle Moore, who's a long-time friend of Moodle, is currently doing a PhD in the UK. And I was talking with her about her project, and her project is going to be, first, a long time ago we were talking about a Moodle wizard. So something that takes you through steps and says, first do this, then do this, then do this, then do this. It's been around for a long time, but it doesn't suit everybody. It's hard to make something that works for everybody. But Michelle Moore's PhD, she's working on a sort of expert system which would be like a block that sits on the side and looks at the things you are doing in your course and gives you just a little suggestion. So a little bit like, even like LinkedIn has something like this. So if you've ever used LinkedIn, it tells you how to, it reminds you to set up your profile. It says, oh, you know, you haven't filled in your education yet, can you fill in your education? Or you haven't done this yet. It just gives you a little thing that you can do every now and then. And that would be a useful thing for teachers to say, have you created have you set the outcomes for the course? Right? Have you defined some forums for discussion? Have you, etc., etc. So it would be a little reminder all the time on the side. I think that's a promising project. And the nice thing is, it's going to be completely done as a block. One Moodle block. So you can just drop it in, and it doesn't need any core stuff at all. Yeah, that would be interesting, but I agree. Yeah, has anyone else got any? I'm really interested in the problems because I spend all my time looking at problems, and that's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in saying that it was great. I'm more interested in saying, what do we have to work on next?
Hay una pregunta allí atrás.
Buenos días. Moodle tiene una actividad que empezó como plugin, que son los talleres o workshop, pero la sensación es que eso está algo crudo. En particular, hay ciertos problemas, como por ejemplo no permite descargar los archivos en bloques, sino hay que hacerlos uno a uno, y cuando se hacen revisiones por pares no es posible que el par suba la revisión con los comentarios en el mismo archivo. Es decir, por ejemplo, él coge un PDF, lo revisa, pone los comentarios ahí, pero no es posible subirlo, entonces hay que hacerle unos maromas y ponerlo a que lo suban a Google Drive y pongan el enlace y todo eso para poder compartir las versiones revisadas. ¿Qué posibilidad hay de que se mejore la actividad de taller?
Yeah, actually I used the workshop the other day, first time in a long time, and I think you can upload files back for review in the latest versions. What version of Moodle are you using? You know the version of Moodle? Ah, 2.5. Okay. That may already be fixed, but if not, see what you should do. So you've identified a good problem there. That you must get that into the Moodle tracker. Right. So we have to tracker TRACKER, tracker.moodle.org. Yourself or someone else to put that issue into the tracker and describe it. You can never assume that developers realize these gaps, right? The problems. There's so many things that we don't. That particular issue, I think it's actually fixed. If it isn't, it really should be. What I would like to see actually is to bring the PDF annotation feature from the assignment module that we have in Moodle 2.6, to bring that into the workshop as well. And it was designed with that in mind, but it hasn't been finished yet. So the annotation feature is when you can see a PDF on screen and you can put comments or lines and so on. Yep. But yeah, currently the workshop is much more focused on the grades that you set. Because it does a lot of mathematics. There's a very complicated algorithm it uses to calculate the final grade for a particular student based on all the grades they got from other students. And that's the main focus of that module, not so much the comments that you might add to the document. But I agree, it must be there.
Martín. Acá. Muchos docentes en ocasiones tienen inconvenientes con el SCORM. Básicamente una aplicación pues permite integrar contenido. En ocasiones cuando se está trabajando con integrar actividades y que automáticamente se genere el reporte de notas, los docentes en este momento pues generan mucha inconsistencia, tienen inconvenientes. ¿Se ha pensado en agregar funcionalidades al SCORM para que sea mucho más sencillo?
That was not, the translation wasn't so specific, but it's, I'm not sure I understand what you mean, but as I said, we're working on the gradebook to make it simpler and more accurate already.
Grading students using SCORM and SCORM, yeah. And the question is if there's more functionality maybe in Moodle SCORM related that we should help them out with that.
Well, so the grading of SCORM is automatic anyway. There's no manual grading of SCORM. So, I mean, SCORM is SCORM. If the SCORM package generates grades, it's a standard thing. It will push the grades. So if there's a problem with the grading, it's probably in the SCORM package. The SCORM package makes the grade and just gives it to Moodle, and we store it in the grade. So I'm not sure if that's answering your question.
Buenos días. En la universidad donde yo laboro estamos trabajando en procesos de inclusión a personas sordas y ciegas. Frente a este aspecto, la versión 2.7, ¿qué herramientas o plugins o elementos me da para facilitar el acceso a estas personas en procesos de formación? Gracias.
So there's several levels here. The first one is that my developers, must do checking on new interfaces and old ones over time to make sure that the interfaces are working with screen readers primarily. So we test with NVDA, which is an open screen reader. We test with JAWS and with VoiceOver, which is on the Safari and Macintosh. So we try and make sure things work. We try and follow the rules. There are standards from W3C about certain tags and classes that need to be in the interface to make them work with things. We do that, and we also test it. But that's not enough, because the final site that the students are looking at also contains a lot of content and configuration from the owners of the site. So you also need to test on your site. You need to set up your site and also do this accessibility testing using screen readers. And often the best way is to find someone who is blind and who knows how to use a screen reader very well and give them some tasks and say, please log in here and find the forum and make a post or whatever. And you need to watch them and get their feedback. Along the way, you may find some Moodle problems, if there are actually Moodle issues, and we want to know about them. So you should, again, make an issue with the tracker for us, mark it as an accessibility issue, and that will come through to accessibility work. Every now and then we have a period of just working on accessibility stuff, and it fixes a lot of things. But the other problems you will find will be in the content. You know, somebody will have made a page of resources using Microsoft Word or something, and put it in, and it's full of rubbish, and the images don't have alt tags, and using tables for layouts and all sorts of things. So it's very much part of that as well. And there may be some parts of Moodle that you don't really use, so you should switch them off. Take them out of the interface. Simplify things as much as possible so that the menus are shorter, and so on. And the other thing maybe is the theme. You know, the theme that you make for your site should also be accessible, and again, you need to test it as well. Accessibility is something we all have to work on. There's no magic bullet. We can't just give a magic system that just is always
question or my comment is about the backups of the courses. Basically, in some activities, when you create a backup, you need to necessarily to choose include user data, you know, like in the Scrum package. I remember because his question, or in glossaries, I think so. And some of the teachers doesn't have the rights, the permissions to choose that user data.
Yeah.
So that means that the backup will not just bring the activity name, but it doesn't have any content in there. So I'm talking about 2.5 version.
Okay.
I don't know if the next version has something about that. And
yeah.
I have a second question.
Yeah. Well, let me start with that one first.
Okay.
I hate the backup interface myself. It's horrible. We need to make a project on that soon to make that better. It's lots of weird looking screens that you go through. It's not good. However, in that process, there are complications because when you're saving user data, you also have to save the user accounts because the backup needs to know who the user is to connect who wrote that piece of information. You have to save their user details, and there are privacy issues. If a teacher downloads that user data, they have a file containing all the user information. That's why there is capabilities for the roles, and you can say whether you trust your teachers to do that or not. So you can modify that in the roles. You can give them the ability to save user data. So just look in the role configuration. I think it's off by default because we're trying to protect privacy. There's a lot of capabilities, I know, but it's kind of necessary to have all this functionality. What's the second question?
Basically, which are the requirements to become a Moodle partner?
Well, first thing is to go to moodle.com, read about it, and there is an application form, and you can put your information in there, and then it's a very long process of discussion and certification. That's the best thing, yeah. And, yeah, start there, moodle.com.
Do you have any question?
No, I think we went through my questions, but I appreciate all the positive feedback about Moodle. It keeps me going. But when I get back home, I'm only focused on the bad things. So I kind of need a positive boost to keep working on all the problems. But I feel for every one of you who hits a problem in Moodle, a difficult area. Rest assured, we all want to fix those things. Anything you can do to help us, and even just telling us, or going into the Moodle tracker and even doing a little search, and maybe you find an issue that someone has already said they are having the same problem, or there's something they don't like, or there's something that could be better, to go in there and vote on it, or make a comment and give more information. So maybe an example or a screenshot. That always helps. Just keep putting that information in there because that's what we usually work with to determine what to fix next. So your help is always needed. And I apologise that the development language of Moodle is English. I had to pick something. That's the easiest for me. But you have to pick one language because if you have source code that's got French and Norwegian and Russian and Japanese, it's impossible. So, unfortunately, you do have to use English to interface with developers. And I apologise, but there's no other way.
Sí, Martín, nosotros más que quejas es como necesidades. Por ejemplo, nosotros vemos ya algunas actividades que son más sincrónicas, como por ejemplo el chat. Y queremos preguntarte si de pronto ese esquema constructivista va a ir a un esquema más conectivista, donde podamos ver unas actividades tipo live learning sincrónicas que permitan al profesor interactuar, más como lo que hoy en día es las redes sociales y temáticas del e-learning para que Moodle evolucione esas temáticas.
So what I understood from that was when you were talking about synchronous, did you mean like voice communications? Did you mean, when you say synchronous, did you mean voice?
Sí,
live
sí.
communications?
Actividades sincrónicas, voz y de pronto imagen.
Yes. These are very hard to do with a PHP program. Moodle is PHP, the language, so it's a bunch of scripts. Put it on a server. It's also it's possible probably, but it's a huge project of its own. And so we don't need to do that because there are other open source projects around and commercial. So I would recommend looking at Big Blue Button as an open source project that does quite good audio, visual, whiteboard discussions, and we use that ourselves in Moodle for discussions. And it's open source, and they're great friends of ours, and I would recommend them. There are also many commercial packages, Adobe Connect Pro, well, you can use Google Hangouts even. There's nothing really perfect yet. I think that whole group of software, there's still none of them are perfect. But they all have integrations for Moodle. So people have written plugins. The Big Blue Button system, for example, there is a Moodle plugin that makes it a seamless part of your Moodle site. And I would use that. As for other social networking stuff, there's many ways to bring that into Moodle and to bring Moodle out in there. So, for example, look at Moodle.org. Those discussions we have inside Moodle.org, you can rate them to say if they're helpful, like just a 1 scale. You say, yes, I think this post is helpful. Those helpful, if you've done that, if anybody does that to a post in Moodle, it becomes part of a feed, an RSS feed of useful posts. And that RSS feed is pumped into Twitter. And so if you look at the Moodle Twitter handle, you'll see a lot of useful posts coming up. And so we're just automatically making Moodle stuff go out to the social network. And going back the other way, you can use blocks in Moodle to bring feeds back into Moodle. So you can do a lot of integration both ways with social systems. Question back.
Adolfo Juárez, Universidad Panamericana, México. Regresando al tema de las necesidades en Moodle, los profesores me han comentado que hace falta algún módulo o algún plugin para capturar participaciones o en su momento asistencias. ¿Se tiene pensado algo así? La segunda sería la necesidad de profesores y alumnos hoy día de generar notas dentro de Moodle. Se tienen plugins como Evernote, de Google Docs, pero si no se abren esos repositorios no se puede tener esa integración. ¿Se ha pensado en algún momento en generar algún cuaderno electrónico, bloc de notas donde los alumnos y profesores puedan generar sus notas y almacenarlas en Moodle? Y por último, ¿cómo va la parte de la certificación de administradores?
The second question I didn't understand, actually. So the first one was about measuring attendance of things, of activities. Was it all activities? If you turn on conditional activities in the course, it's not on by default. If you turn it on, Moodle does keep track of how each student has completed each item. So maybe for a resource, you can say if they've read it, if they've looked at it, it's completed. And maybe for a quiz, you can say if they have got more than 80%, say, then it's completed. And then there is a report then that shows you all of the students. It's one of those standard reports, progress report. It shows all of the activities, all the students, and it's a grid that shows what they have done. So that's probably what you were looking for. That's standard. There's also a progress block, progress bar block, which is good for giving that sort of feedback to students as well. That's an optional plugin that you have to get. The third question about Moodle administration certification. There's no progress on that. It's just too hard. We don't have the resources to do that right now. So I would like to see that probably. One problem with these certifications is that, say you're an administrator and you sat for this, you did this Moodle administrator certification. That not you personally, but say someone did. What we have found, even with the Moodle course creator certificate that we have, that people then use this certificate to advertise their business. And they say, we are official Moodle providers. It conflicts with the Moodle partner program. So there's a bit of a problem with those certifications, and that it actually conflicts with the thing that keeps us going. But I would still like to see something like that to have a certification. Second question you had, I didn't quite understand about taking notes to make grades. So I can't answer it because I didn't know what it meant. Grading usually happens on activities. Well, it only happens on activities. And there's no other way. So I'm not. You can also make notes. That's separate. So maybe you can explain it again.
Sí, no, da en el sentido de que durante la clase el profesor.
Is that the question? Is that what he was asking? Can you? Sorry. Can you?
Da en el sentido de que durante la
Oh,
clase.
can you import offline grades? Of course. Yeah. So there's in the grade book there's an import, and the import lets you import, say, an Excel spreadsheet where you have grades from something else. But inside Moodle there is also an offline assignment. So you can make an assignment where you're not asking them to do anything. The description of the assignment could be create a beautiful sculpture out of brass or something. And presumably you've looked at the sculpture and you've graded it. So in the assignment module, in this assignment activity, then you put the grade for their sculpture. So it's not online. You can still put the grades in. Hopefully that's good.
Tenemos otra pregunta.
Mi pregunta es sobre los reportes que se generan actualmente. Mientras esté uno dentro de un curso, pues los reportes son bastante completos en cuanto a calificaciones y reportes de finalización, pero a nivel global o a nivel general de la plataforma no hay, por ejemplo, reportes que me den como un histórico de los estudiantes, qué cursos han tomado y cuál ha sido su nota completa de todos esos cursos. Me parece que hace falta un tema de reportes más global y más general, más como unificado, porque a nivel de cursos, bien, los reportes están bien, digamos, a nivel de curso, pero a nivel global me parece que falta mucho.
I completely agree. Do you remember before when I said I call Moodle a course management system? Exactly. The focus is on the course. It's not as much of a learning management system as it could be, and that is a big gap. So one of the things I was talking about yesterday is that is a big focus on the roadmap. Right now we're working on the report infrastructure so that all the modules can publish information to the central reports, and that will definitely answer that question. Yeah. So yes, I feel that one too. There's another one.
Bien, en la información existente en Internet sobre la herramienta de foros, dice que se puede instalar sobre servidores Windows, pero que su desempeño es mejor en Linux. Quisiera saber cuáles son esos inconvenientes técnicos al instalarlos en Windows, dado que es como de más amplio manejo para los docentes que trabajan con nosotros.
Don't use Windows. The performance problems on Windows are not Moodle's fault. It's PHP running on Windows. That said, I mean, Microsoft did put a lot of effort into improving PHP some years ago to run on Windows. So I think the performance is okay, but, well, still Windows. I'm not a big fan of Windows, maybe you can tell. Lots of people do use Moodle on Windows, I'm not sure what you're saying about teachers, because the teachers will probably not be installing Moodle directly on their own desktops. So even, obviously when we talk about Moodle on Windows, we're talking about the software of Moodle running directly on a Windows server. And that's a different matter. If someone has chosen Windows for a server, I assume they know how to use it and they'll be able to make Moodle work well. But a teacher will not normally be installing Moodle on their own desktop, because it's not a very reliable place to be running courses for lots of students from. But Moodle, there is a Windows package you can download and run on your desktop, just for local use, maybe to work on your own courses, to practice, to try out things, to do development. So that's what that's for.
I have a question about the chat and the forums. And
yes.
Have you used like real time to make it more useful and like beautiful? You can say it.
Yeah,
for example,
forums or chat?
Forums and chat.
Yeah. I think chat does need more work. Maybe you want to help with that. That's good. It does work, but it is not pretty. And actually, but there was work done on it a couple of versions ago, so I'm not sure what version you're familiar with.
2.6 and 7.
Okay.
But I am thinking in WebSockets or something like that. If you type something in the chat, you don't have to reload the text to see if someone answered you.
It's already doing that. Yeah, it's already JavaScript.
Okay. So my problem is with messages and forms.
Check in the settings, because in the settings and the administration, you can choose the method of communication. And one of them is, there's a couple of AJAX methods. Yeah.
And my other question is about JavaScript. In the guidelines of Moodle, you said that you have to write modules that can work without JavaScript. It is important now because I don't see like too much scenarios.
Yeah. So that changed last year. We have a new policy. The policy is that you can rely on JavaScript in your interface if your interface conforms to W3C, WAI, the Web Accessibility Initiative, Level 2, AA. So if you can conform to the accessibility level AA, then you can have JavaScript. So the main reason we said before that you had to have a non-JavaScript version was for accessibility. But now most screen readers operate with JavaScript on, and you have to make sure that your interface. So for example, if you have a little pop-up that pops up in front of something, it's a little JavaScript dialog. You need to have the correct tags in place so that the screen reader knows that something has popped up, that the page is changing dynamically. You need to inform a blind person what is changing, and you need to move the cursor around for them appropriately. So you need to take care of those things, otherwise the rule applies, no JavaScript.
And the last one is just a short question. It's about the Team Canopy initiative that is for like learning record store. Yes.
Yeah.
Have you thought in integrate Moodle with it, or you were talking about an external database for logs?
Sure. I think the approach for Moodle is to not be a learning record store. Like, I don't think Moodle should collect this information from other systems. Although somebody could write that plugin and maybe it would work. But our focus is on the logging and events, which we did look at TinCan API while designing the data in those logs. The idea is that the logs, you could write a report that listens to the events and publish the TinCan stream. So at least the Moodle events are being published out to an LRS, so a learning repository. So that's, I think Moodle as a provider is a good case. It's very easy to do, and we're doing it. We will make that plugin, or somebody will write that plugin. Now we have the data being collected in a proper way. But it remains to be seen how useful this API is. I mean, I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing people getting excited about it, but every few years people get excited about some new standard, and a lot of them have disappeared. Anybody remember Java beans, Corba? This was going to be the new world of software, and you don't even know anyone knows what they are anymore. Right? So there's always new things happening, especially in educational technology. There's a lot of standards, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So we'll see. But I think Moodle as a provider makes sense.
Bueno, muy bien. El semáforo, muchas gracias. Realmente felicitarlos porque fue una actividad muy activa. Todo esto
Los invitamos a refrigerio, por favor, entreguen los equipos porque la niña se va.